everyone. This is Takoda, CIO of Attache for Business, joined here by Lisa Hammond, our CEO. I wanted to know what we're talking about today.
We're going to talk about how early stage entrepreneurs or business owners will often take the advice of anybody who gives it.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a problem. Just right
It
there.
is a problem. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. Why is that a problem?
So, I think one of the tendencies is, and, I call it kind of crowdsourcing advice, where you're asking people, so what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And often the information that they're getting is from people who don't have any knowledge of business. They're just giving their opinion, and people love to give their opinion on things, whether it's valid or not. And they end up, following something that makes absolutely no sense from a business standpoint. And in fact, sometimes they're looking for confirmation of what they think is a good idea,
Mm,
and they can have experts telling them it's a bad idea, but then they get that one person, that one family member who's never owned a business, but wants to be helpful when they ask them what they should do, and they
mhm.
give them bad advice, and they're like, oh, well, my brother-in-law said that I should do such and such. And it's like, well, so what has your brother-in-law done? What kind of business has he run? Well, he hasn't, but he's a really smart person. And those are the kind of things you hear, but it ends up leading them down a path that's just not useful.
Right. Okay. So that I think is pretty obvious, right? But it's still probably pretty tempting to do just because you're just looking for any sort of guidance whatsoever. So I can see why people would be tempted. I think there's also something a little bit more subtle too, where people might be giving good advice, but it might be contrasting advice with other people. So you might literally be getting advice from different people that actually don't jive with each other.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it still goes back to who are you going to listen to? But you're right. Even with experts, you're going to get contradicting advice.
Hmm. So what's your advice then? What is your advice on how to deal with multiple threads of advice? How do
Well,
you choose?
yeah, I would say the first thing is, don't ask advice of people who have not been there, done it, and been successful. Just don't ask their advice. You can tell them what you're doing. If they give you advice, ignore it. Even if it sounds like good advice, do the best you can just to ignore it or to get it validated by somebody who has the expertise and the experience.
Mhm. Okay. Well, how about when you're getting multiple pieces of advice from people who are experts, but they don't seem to work together?
Yeah, that's a more difficult one.
Mhm.
I think the thing that happens is over time, and that's one of those things where with experience you start to learn whose advice is more valid. The other thing that you can do is to see, definitely read books and read articles, and don't read Quora, and don't read crowdsourced advice. Like, don't read Quora, don't read Yahoo Answers or any of those where people are just saying whatever they think. Read actually from experts, listen to podcasts of experts, and take the advice that sounds like you're hearing it multiple times.
Okay, that's great advice.
Now there are rare times where that one person who's an expert that's been there, done that, will tell you something, and everybody else is telling you something different, and that one person was right. But that's
Mhm.
not often. So it could happen. It probably will happen at some point, but it's not something that happens often. So you're better off taking the advice of multiple experts, and then if that doesn't work, then go back to the one person who it's like, well, Seth Gordon said such and such and such. So I think I'll go back to that.
Right, gotcha. And now I want to kind of travel back to this idea of talking to multiple experts. It's just like, what do you think of the idea of working with a coach or something like that, where you're working with somebody who's giving you a coherent, integrated strategy towards something? Because I would imagine that their advice is most useful if you follow the entire plan,
Right,
right?
right.
And then not getting thrown off by other random people's advice, even if it would be good advice out of context.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes complete sense, Talk. Having a coach that having a really good coach. You know, when you're getting a coach, get a good one, pay for a good one. Don't just, take anybody who puts up a sign that says I'm a coach. And make sure that the person that you're working with is familiar with what you're doing and has either done what you're doing or not the exact same thing, but has done something in that arena or has worked with multiple people who've been successful at it. Because sometimes there are those coaches who may not be able to, run their own business, but they really give good advice, and they've helped multiple other people to run their business. So that person would be fine too. But
Gotcha.
make sure you're getting good advice from a good coach.
Gotcha. So what it boils down to, correct me if I'm wrong, is what you're saying is vet your advice.
Definitely.
Okay. All right. I think that's great advice, Lisa. I would listen to your advice any day. So thank you, Lisa. I hope all of you have gotten something out of this. I definitely have. So be sure to like and subscribe.
All right. Thanks, Talk.
Yeah. See you next time.